Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
Girl, real talk. This whole "it's a new year, time to reinvent myself" trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences.
It was extremely, extremely emotional for me. It goes back to several years back when I went out on the property where the car was found. And as time moves on, and other people's lives don't stop. And the property where the car was found. And I remember the first time coming over that fence line and seeing that property and the way it had changed from the time that we started this to then. It literally, I can't even explain the emotion that I felt when I saw it. It was so awful to me. It's like,
he was always a red flag to me, because that kind of information, when it comes out that quick and it's that specific, there's usually some truth in it. It may not be the whole truth, or it may be a variation of the truth, but there's usually some truth in that.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
It's been a couple of months since we have had Paula on the podcast, and as we start the new year, we wanted to check in with her to see how she feels about the new investigation that's starting on the case.
We also want to hear her thoughts about the excavation at Moxley Pond. Even though we spent 2 days with her there, we were all so busy we didn't have enough time to see how Paula felt about the whole operation and the outcome.
We felt it was important to give her time to really process what went on there in November, because it was an emotional roller coaster for everyone. So we're very happy to talk to her now.
So we got Paula on the phone with us. It's the new year. We haven't spoken to her on the podcast a few months. We spent some time with her in Oklahoma during the excavation, so we wanted to check back in with Paula to find out how she's doing and what that experience was like for her, and also to get an update from her on what she feels, how the B.I.A. taking over the case and how that makes her feel. So Paula, thanks for talking to us, and tell us a little bit about when we were all together in Oklahoma at Toby's Ranch, and how was that experience for you?
and thank y'all for having me on again, and thank y'all for continuing to put this podcast out there. It's definitely been a godsend, and all the new information coming in, it's really not new information, just new tips coming in with the same information that's very beneficial to the case. It's been very helpful because of the podcast. The excavation was quite the experience for me. I mean, I've been looking for Molly for 9.5 years and doing searches, but this is something next level that we did out there on Toby's Ranch. It was great. Be able to see how things actually work and how things should have been done. And it was very interesting and very emotional, to say the least. I appreciate everything that everybody did out there, because I know it was exhausting, mentally and physically exhausting for everybody.
Well, we were happy to be there and happy to do it for you, and we're glad that we were able to do it. You know, we were worried about you while we were there, because it's really difficult to be with the family during these things, because you never know what's going to happen. And you guys are just such a great group of people, your whole family, like your son and his wife, and you and Misty and everyone. It was just great to spend time with you and be able to do this for you. So we were happy to be there.
Oh, thank you.
So,
and you mentioned my son and his wife. That's the first time I've had family come and help search. And I mean family, like my immediate family, my children, to be there, because I've kept my children, although they're all adults, they have their own lives. I've kind of distanced them from any of this. That's the first time any of them have been there. And it meant so much to me, and for them to see what it is for Heath and Bonnie to both see what it is that I have been doing for a while now. It meant a lot, and it meant a lot to see them get in there and help. And I mean, Bonnie was incredible. I think Mac or Maureen once said it, you know, she had the eagle eye. It was like crazy how she would spot things that coming down that river we had going on that. And both of them, they were incredible, and I was glad to have them.
Oh, they were awesome. And it was so great to meet Heath, your son. We've heard so much about him. It was great to meet him in person. And Bonnie was just fantastic. It was interesting being there with you again because the last time we were there, it looked so different. You know, it was like this rushing water of a watering hole that was a little scary. I remember when we were there last time, we were like worried someone was going to accidentally fall in there. But this time, I mean, how did you feel when you saw after they pumped everything out? I saw you praying and I saw you kind of talking to Molly and trying to get some kind of connection there. I was just wondering what was going through your mind when you saw them pump all the water out of there.
It was extremely, extremely emotional for me. It goes back to several years back when I went out on the property where the car was found. And, you know, as time moves on, and other people's lives don't stop, but ours does. And the property where the car was found had been purchased, and the people that purchased it had developed it. They had actually built a home on it and actually put in ponds, man-made ponds on the property and stuff. And I remember the first time coming over that fence line and seeing that property and the way it had changed from the time that we started this to then. It literally, I can't even explain the emotion that I felt when I saw it. It was so awful to me. It's like, what have they done? And I kind of felt that way when I saw that area, because since the beginning, Moxley Lake, that property has been high on the list of things to do. And I've been out there a dozen or more times prior to our visit in November. And it's just like, when I saw it, it was just like, it's so different now. It looks so different. And what have we messed up? You know, that goes on in my head. What, by digging and moving things around, what have we missed? But I have great faith in Toby and his crew that when they were excavating the sides of that to allow us to get down into that area, that they took great care in doing that and paying attention to things that were being dug up.
Oh, yeah, they were so amazing.
He doesn't just have ranch hands. All his ranch hands have really extensive resumes. A lot of them are former special forces. Some of them have agricultural degrees. I mean, these aren't just regular ranch hands. These guys he's formulated a group of guys around him that really know what they're doing and can think outside of the box and knew exactly how to take out that side of the pond to get access to, with that backhoe, down into the hole. I mean, it was pretty amazing. Right. Like when we got there, and he did all this before we got there. It's almost like he prepped all of this before we got there. And then when Maureen and Mac showed up, they couldn't have been more impressed. They go, this is a top-notch operation here. Sometimes we don't even have all this. We had a call like beforehand with everybody, and Mac and Maureen told Toby what they needed, and he did it letter to the law.
Right, he did. And it made me feel proud to see their expressions and what they had to say about the way this is being handled. That made me very proud, because she is a little girl that's missing, that most people listening don't know, never met. Toby has never met Molly, but he shares a birthday with her. He does share a very special connection with Molly. There is no doubt in my mind, until the day we're able to bring her home and lay her to rest, he is going to be there by our side. There is no doubt. Him and Emily have been incredible. There's never a time that I haven't contacted them that they answer the phone or they return my call. They are just incredible people, and want to do whatever it is they can do to help bring her home. And I mean, even outside their ranch, if there's anything we need to do anywhere else, they'll make sure it happens. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, they're good people.
We're blessed.
Yeah.
We are so blessed to have Toby on our team.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Him and his wife, I mean...
His whole family and all his people were just a blessing to us. We couldn't believe how hospitable they were.
They are pretty incredible.
Yeah, and how they had everything dialed in, and that they were just so passionate about
accommodating. He hosted everybody.
I know, and just so passionate about finding an answer, which I think is amazing, and we were lucky to have that. When the dog handlers came, you were going to take them to another spot where the dogs had hit before. So you had left the dig site. And while you were gone, Maureen and Bonnie and I had gone up to the house to get some lunch for everybody, and we were coming right back. And while we were up there, we got a call from Toby urgently to hurry up and get back down there. And you were still gone with the dog. So where did you go?
I had gone to search a well with the dog handler, but I had come back while you guys were gone to the house. I was back down at the dig site just before they found what they suspected was the tongue. So I get down there and you guys were not there. So I asked where you were. They said y'all had gone up to the house to get food. So I said, I'm going to go up there and help them. And I was driving up there. That's when Toby called me and said, you need to get Maureen down here. And I said, okay. So I came in and got Maureen and took her back down there.
And then when you went back down there, what did you see?
They had something over on the ice chest. And I didn't get near it. I was like, what is that? Because I could see it, and I kind of suspected. And my son came over with his phone and showed me a picture. I'm like, okay, is that a tongue? And he was like, that's what we think it is. And then he zoomed in on the picture and you could see what looked to be taste buds on it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I walked away. And then from that point, I pretty much let everybody else deal with that situation because I didn't want to be anywhere near it.
Well, yeah, that's what we were worried about. That was our whole concern the whole time, was that God forbid we do find something and you're there.
Yeah, but it's so hard to judge because you've been such at the forefront of this investigation. It's a balancing act, I'm sure, for you in your mind, where you want to know, but you don't want to know if it's real.
Right. And something else that crossed my mind, though? I didn't want to contaminate it. That kind of crossed my mind. I was like, I share DNA with Molly. That went through my mind. I didn't want to be anywhere near it. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't even get close enough to see it with my own eyeballs until it was bagged. There was a situation, I think Misty talked about it when she talked on the podcast. Me and her and my sister were out searching one day just by ourselves. And we had gotten a tip and we went to check it out. And it was in July or August, actually. And it was so, so hot. And we were just going to be out there a little bit that day. We weren't going to stay long. And we took shovels and picks and stuff. I found a spot in the ground that looked like shovel marks. And we're out in the middle of nowhere. There should have been, where we were actually at, there should not have been shovel marks. So we started digging with our hands and we started thinking we saw a skull, the face of a skull. And I remember all three of us saw it. We looked at it and saw it and we all freaked out. Mandy and Misty went and got my truck. They just sit in there. I just stood outside and paced, waiting for Michael Miller to show up. And we called him to come out there and go look at it because we wouldn't even go back to that location until he got there. But I still don't think I would be any better at handling a situation like that. I might. I'm usually pretty good about controlling myself, though.
Yeah, you were great that whole
emotions.
weekend. I'm other than us, you got a bunch of strangers around. You've spoken to Toby before, but I don't think you've actually physically met him. Have you met him before that? So there's a lot.
Toby?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
all right.
yeah.
So
I've met Toby multiple times.
But you're surrounded by all these people. You're at a pivotal moment in the investigation. You're finally getting to a point where we can kind of search one of these locations. There's others that need to be searched, but it was a whirlwind for all of us.
Well, something I notice about myself, to be quite honest, I kind of want to be left alone. And I'll sit and listen to conversations, but I won't engage in the conversations. And I get very, irritated. I think we all well know that I got irritated at Toby's house that day.
Mm-hmm.
And,
oh, yeah. Yeah.
And lashed out. And so, those are things that's sometimes how I handle things.
Well, you had a right to.
We're
not going to divulge what irritated you, but it was an outside influence that irritated you. It wasn't anybody in the inner circle of the people that we were there with.
No.
So, we won't even talk. We're not talking about that, but I understand why I actually heard that what that person said prior to you, and I called them out on it, and I said, you don't want to say that again. And of course they did, and you heard it, and you had every right in the world to get irritated about it. That's completely normal. Because if it bothered me, I can understand how much it bothered you.
Yeah, it's just so much over the years. People wanting to divulge information and then not tell you the complete story. And they
want to inject themselves into the story to make themselves feel bigger, and then they withhold.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong thing to do, especially in that environment when you have the principals of this investigation and the family who are there to find answers.
Yeah, it's happened before. It's not, that's my point in that was just that's kind of, am quiet, just want to distance myself and just think about the day and what transpired. And I don't know.
Well, we purposely wanted to wait a while to talk to you about this because, we spoke to a lot of everybody else at Toby's, on location. But we specifically wanted to give you time to kind of process this entire thing before we spoke to you about this. So I'm glad you're willing to talk to us about it. I could tell, you were tightly wound. I think the fact that you had Heath there and Bonnie, I think it was an extraordinary thing to have. I think oftentimes you guys would go off on your own, you and Heath, and you were standing in the hole and tell you were having these deep conversations about this. But you guys he was really there to support you, and I could tell that you appreciated it. So it was good to have him there.
And that's my son. He's always been supportive of me, even when he didn't understand it, until he was there in November. Now, you got to understand, it's been over 9 years. He didn't know the extent of what's been going on. And that kind of just turned him around. But he's always been supportive. But he's my rock in that situation that while we were down there, because I had him when I was very, very young, and we've kind of grown up together, and we're very supportive of each other. We're always there for each other. And so it meant the world to me to have him by my side during that. And he was being very comforting. I know the situation you're talking about when I was just walking down in that hole, just trying to see any little thing that we could have missed, and he came down there and he was worried. He was worried about me. And so anyway, we had a nice little talk.
Yeah, I can tell. And then, all right, so we were there for 2 days. We did the best we could in the time we did, and we thought we found something. We sent it off. Obviously, it was not something. It wasn't human remains, but a lot of the people that we took photographs and we sent it to, like medical people and everything, they all were saying that it was a tongue. So we didn't know what it was, and it finally came back as a piece of fungi, which I guess on a molecular level, it can have some same qualities as human. I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's what was told to us. And then, so we have to move on. But the thing that is important to remind everybody is that site isn't finished. And it's not considered finished because we're going to get into talking about the B.I.A. taking over, and they're going to go back and look at that place again because there is something there. These dogs aren't lying. In fact, the dogs that we used the second time were the dogs that the B.I.A. used. So they have an extreme amount of confidence in that handler and their dogs, his dogs. Right. So they're going to go back. And I think that, these other places that are going to get searched, I think hopefully soon, as they process through all this information, because they're taking the case. So we don't know.
And I think it's an incredible coincidence that I made a call that night to a lady that I know who is a dog handler, and she's a deputy, but she had to work the following day. So she said, but I think I have somebody else that can do it. I will get in touch with them. And that happened to be the guy that ended up coming out, who also works for the B.I.A. And at the time we were there, none of us knew that the B.I.A. was already getting involved in this case.
No, we didn't. No.
And so it was just an incredible coincidence.
Yeah, they were positioning
that we had a handler who actually worked for the B.I.A. or does work for the B.I.A. that we actually had there, and that he can go to them and say, hey, look, here's my report, Yeah.
Well, I think it's great. So let's move on, since we just wanted to get your perspective on that and the whole search and stuff like that. Obviously, whenever that's done again, hopefully we'll have some other answers. Hopefully they'll find whatever it is that's in that hole, in that pond, because there's human remains in there. Everyone says it. Whatever it is, the dogs aren't lying. So there's something there. So the B.I.A. is now, because I called you. Was I one? I can't remember if I was the one who told you that they were taking over the case. Did I call you? I can't even remember. It's been so.
Yes.
Okay, so then I called you after I heard about that. What was your first impression when you heard that this case has just gone to a new level?
Well, I was elated. It's what has needed to happen for years. Molly is one of their own. I just felt like, honestly, a load had been lifted off my shoulders. It's like there is no doubt in my mind that things are about to get done, or things are getting done and getting done right. thankfully they're willing to listen and hear what has been going on for the last 9.5 years and filter through all of this information from day one. I can't tell you, it was just the greatest feeling to hear that they had officially, we had heard the rumors, but we didn't know anything officially until, what was it, just a few days after we came home from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So, it was just days after that we had heard it officially. So, or that y'all told me, because y'all heard it first. So it's a great thing. It's a great thing. They're not dismissing. Yeah, we found something, so we stopped excavating because
they're taking over.
We didn't want to disturb anything.
Exactly.
So, but if we had had more time when we found out that it was nothing, or it wasn't what we thought it was, then we could have went back to what we were doing.
Absolutely.
We put everything down, and so now they're going to come in with a lot more resources than even we had. And Toby brought out the Army there.
He had the Army, he had the Navy, he had
he had everybody.
Yes, he had Marines. yes, he did.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just thrilled. Just gives me great hope in Molly coming home and answers soon to come.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to talk about this, but not the most recent tip you just got, but someone reached out to you about, I guess, a few days ago saying they want to meet with you.
Oh, well, that's, it's really nothing directly related to Molly's case other than, just the level of corruption that is involved within Love and Carter County. And they have information that can prove it. And so they're not in a position to bring it out publicly themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to show it and put it out there because they're saying it's just the level of corruption is incredible, and it's just been going on for so many years. It just carries over to the next generation, and it just keeps going and going. So anyway, hopefully I'll get to meet up soon. And
yeah, but they said something that was that put me back here, and let me know if you don't want to talk about this, but she said that something about you personally and your safety.
Well, she said that they were the people that know about the level of corruption is just surprised that nothing has ever been done to me, that I have not been hurt, because she said the exposure that you've brought to this corruption, it's hard to talk about, but it's very bad people, very bad people. And she says, and you're shedding a light on it. The corruption's been there, but there's been no light ever. And now it's being brought out. And she said, people are worried about it.
Yeah.
The people involved in it are worried about it.
Well, so I think you were the catalyst, but there's a lot of things that are happening that you have nothing to do with that's exposing it even more. The bug at Carter County Sheriff's Department. And I'm sure there's probably plenty of others. I mean, we've just in the 9 months we've been doing this podcast, we've had people reach out to us numerous times talking about the level of corruption.
We get an email about the corruption at least once to twice a day from people. I think it's good that you're public, because I do believe that helps protect you.
It helps. And it's important that people understand that this needs to be taken care of, and it's out now. It's being investigated. I think, Darcy Schoon was talking about how they're looking at a bunch of Oklahoma police departments, the DOJ, in our last podcast. And I looked it up, and it looked like they're looking at a lot of them for civil rights violations and mishandling evidence and a bunch of other things. So they're under the microscope right now. So there's... Hopefully the bad ones will either retire or they'll be removed from their positions, and we can bring some reputable people in there.
And then this is basically the only thing that I'm going to really say about the conversation today is someone that I spoke with. They grew up in Love County on the West End their entire life. They had no idea until Molly's disappearance how bad people are. Like Joe Russell was one of the names that got brought up. They had no idea. And it's not just me saying it now. There's so many other people saying, well, yeah, this kind of happened. They're kind of filling people in on, he wasn't the best. It's the locals that everybody wants to see the good in people. And so when you have a sheriff that is prominently dealing with he's dealing with the drug addicts. These drug addicts aren't telling their family members, hey man, Joe's let me off on this deal because I slipped him a 20 or what. You know what I mean?
His own son, he was dealing drugs right underneath his nose. So your son said it the best way when he was on with us. He says, when you're getting green lights to do illegal things from the man who's supposed to be cracking down in the law, you just keep on going with the green lights.
Yeah.
You got free reign.
Yes.
To do whatever you need to do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's what I told Joe back in September 2013. I told him that Molly's blood is on his hands because he has allowed that community, his family, to do as they please for all these years, and nobody gets held responsible for it. The crime was rampant, but nobody knew it because nobody's getting arrested. Everybody's getting away with it. And so what big deal is it to go hurt a little 17-year-olds? They're going to get away with it.
Yeah.
For instance, I got a call in 2013 from Connipp's aunt threatening to blow off my face. And her exact words, and there was 3 people listening to this phone call. She said, and I hope you're recording this because guess what? I won't get in trouble. And it was over a post that I made about her connection to the assistant district attorney.
Back up. She said, I hope you're recording this.
Mm-hmm. Because there's 3 people.
I won't get in trouble.
Yeah, she's not going to get in trouble because she's friends with the district attorney.
She worked for a doctor whose husband was the assistant district attorney. I made a police report. It's on file. The people that heard the phone call, they made a police report. In her head, she believes that. She believes she can make all the threats she wants. She can hurt people, and she's not going to get in trouble for it. That is her. And the saddest part of it is she is still working in the medical field right there in Ardmore, Oklahoma. I wouldn't want that woman. If anybody could have listened to the words that she said to me, then they wouldn't want her anywhere near their family member.
Yeah.
The words were horrible. And so.
And you had other people listening to the call, so you had witnesses about this call as well?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also find it's really ironic, too, that I heard recently, I don't know where the last couple months, that Joe Russell tried to get a job as a process server, serving summons to people.
He tried to do that twice. I think the first time was in Love County. We called the courthouse and we wrote letters because it has to be, I can't remember. No, the first time I think was in Marshall County. He tried to do it outside the county in which he lives in. And you have to reside in the county in which you're a process server. So when we found out about that, then we made it public. And then we called the courthouse and people wrote letters. And so he was denied that application. And then he tried it again in Love County. And it may be vice versa. He may have done Love first. I don't know. And the same thing. And he was denied it.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
I just find the irony is just pretty laughable. The fact that someone who's been a member of law enforcement for 16 or 20 years, I don't know how long he was in there. I know he was sheriff for 16 years, I think. But the fact that after all the stuff that and believed to have been done, and the fact that he was brought before a grand jury and he was able to basically skate through that, he's going to go out and start serving people summonses? It's kind of ridiculous. There's one other thing I want to talk to you about that just came to mind. You sent us an article last week that someone sent to you, and I really wasn't sure. I didn't look at the date of it. And once you reminded me what the date was, I was like, wow, someone sent that to you right after she went missing. So explain to me the article, because it was an article that was written, I can't remember the news source. Was it KXII?
2 ringling men charged after teen's overdose.
Oh, it's KTEN.
Yeah, that's K10. Out of Ardmore or area.
Tell me about that article again.
There was a couple of people charged after a teen overdosed at a party. I believe the party was in Jefferson County at a party called Project Mud Creek. Apparently, the teens got the idea after watching a show called Project, maybe it was a movie called Project X, I think it was. They had this massive party with a lot of underage drinking and things going on. And this happened, I think, on the 6th of July, 2013. So just a couple of days prior to Molly's and Colt's disappearance.
What's interesting about that is that
we heard about this party multiple times. I mean, this isn't the first time we've heard that there was this party that weekend that they were going to, and that everybody was going to, and that everybody was quiet and trying to protect each other because nobody wanted to get in trouble. So this isn't the first time that we heard this. We just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, I found it very strange that just out of nowhere, somebody sent me the article about it, because I knew about the party back then, and I'd even asked some people about the party and the dates of the party and such, and if they recalled seeing Molly there.
So
I
much
had no
information
idea
on
that
this case. It just seems like there's so many people that probably know more than they're willing to share with everybody, and we're hoping that the B.I.A. can make it safe for people to come out, which I know they will, because I think that's the biggest thing that people are afraid of. They're afraid of retaliation, and I understand that. Those people have to live in that area. But at the same point,
Right.
if the bad guys aren't flushed out and held responsible for what they did, it just gives them a license to do it again.
Right.
Even though there's new people involved, I don't think the environment is changing all that much there. It seems to be like business as usual over there.
It's kind of what I'm hearing. They're just a lot more careful about it. They're not near as reckless. Before, they could be as reckless as they wanted, because there was no fear of getting in trouble over it. But a lot of it, I believe, is continuing on just from things that we've been told.
Yeah. And I like the fact when we spoke to B.I.A. that they said they're going to start from square one, which is what needs to be done. Because nothing's really been done properly. So they have to go and do it from square one. It's like a hodgepodge of you investigating. You have tons of information. Then you have Carter County has like boxes of information. FBI has boxes of information. Love County, for whatever it's worth, they have information. Other counties have other information. There's a lot of people. OSBI has information. And so it's just a mishmash. And I'll say it again, because I just once again found out that with the Idaho killings, the one thing that we know from boots on the ground, people that were investigating that case, that was a fully cooperated case between state, local, and federal law enforcement. And they said that it couldn't have gone any better. And, how long did it take them? It took them maybe a couple months to get the guy.
Yeah, it wasn't long.
So that's the epitome of what an investigation for a multiple homicide like this should look like.
Exactly. That is something that needs to change in Oklahoma. The agencies are very closed-mouthed about their case, even within other, and I'm not talking about with a civilian like me, I'm talking about within different agencies. OSBI is not going to tell the FBI their information, or the OSBI isn't going to talk to Love County and tell them that they want your information, but they're not going to divulge any.
And I understand the rationale. The rationale is that they don't want any leaks, because they need to control the information.
Well, also, this case was never handled properly from the get-go, and that's what we always see when you go back to the beginning. In those first 24, 48 hours, like Drew Kessie said, like you've said, like all these people have said, those are the most critical moments. And the Idaho case, the news was handling it differently than Molly and Colt's case, and they immediately had all of these agencies involved in the Idaho case. Now, Molly and Colt's case was a different scenario, because we had a sheriff who was telling everybody they're just runaways, including the local news reporters. So you have a sheriff who's hoarding the information, not sharing information, and that's what stalled this investigation from day one. So, of course, you can't even compare the two, and that's what has to change. That's what has to change.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Think back to the tip that came in on July the 10th of 2013 that Molly's out there tied to a tree, and Love County was there. And if Carter County, they have trust in their adjacent county. They were told, oh, Joe's down there, he's checking it out, everything's okay. But let's go over here to North Love County and look at this tip that we just got. So had they drove down to the end of Long Hollow Road, we would not be talking today. Because one, she would have been found alive, or two, she'd have been found deceased, and we could have put her to rest by now. Until they can prove it otherwise, or prove that it's not true, I will believe that. I will believe that tip was true, and that she was at the end of Long Hollow Road that day, and could have been brought home that day.
Yeah. We totally agree.
100%.
And I think that's one of the things that B.I.A. probably echoes too, because they said it all fell up. That's the only facts in the case you have right now.
That's when it all fell apart right after that.
Yeah. We're thankful that their B.I.A. is looking at it and diving into this investigation. We're happy that you're happy with that. I think it's probably, you've always said you wish you could just sit back and just watch. And I think you're going to have an opportunity to do that now. But I know people are still reaching out with you with tips. And if you do have tips out there, people who know are connected to this case, Now is the time to come forward because we have a reputable organization who's willing to take this case on. They're going to really do a good job, I feel, and I think they have a good handle on this case. So if you have a lead, if you know any information, if you know someone who has information, because there's still people out there that are scared, that are afraid to talk, I think it's important for you now to come out.
You can't live with this for the rest of your life. This is what causes people to get sick, and the quality of life that you have when you're hiding a secret like this is terrible, and it's not a way to live. And people should just do the right thing. Enough time has passed. This family has suffered enough. Colt's family has suffered enough. It's time.
Girl, real talk. This whole "it's a new year, time to reinvent myself" trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
Now we're going to check in with Jodi Barth, who has become our in-house podcast investigator on this case.
With Jodi's 30 years of experience as crime scene investigator and detective commander in the state of Illinois, we are always interested in what she has to say about the case.
We wanted to talk to you since it's the new year. We've been kind of circling back with a lot of people because there's been some changes of what's going on, which you're aware of. But just wanted to kind of get your idea on what you think. Number one, where do you think the case needs to go? And also your law enforcement perspective on now that the B.I.A. is taken over. What are your thoughts about that?
First of all, I'm thrilled that the B.I.A. is taking it over. It's obviously a cold case for OSBI, and they just don't seem to be doing what they need to be doing. As far as what I see, I think you have to go back to the beginning. As I said a long time ago, that case was lost at the moment that Sheriff Russell called that chase off. And I think they have to go back there and start digging. I mean, the first one obviously is Con Nip, he knows what happened. But I would widen that search or that circle to his immediate surrounding relatives, friends, the ones that were involved in things that night, the ones that were involved in the phone calls with Sabrina. Sabrina's definitely in. It's not that they maybe did anything, but they certainly, I believe, have knowledge of what happened in those earliest hours.
Yeah. Well, just a piece of information that we can release now is that OSBI did talk to Con probably a few months ago, and with a lawyer. And so they did talk to him, and he answered their questions. We don't know what their questions were, but I don't know what the result of that is, but he has spoken to them again. And he has spoken to them not them, but other law enforcement in the past. What he has said in those interviews, we don't know. So I think you're right. I think the B.I.A. does need to go back to the beginning, which is what they're going to do. That's what they told us they're going to do. So I think that's important. And all these people need to be re-interviewed again.
Right. And they have to press in. I mean, there's little things like what happened to that car. I don't think that car was sitting there the whole time. Maybe it was, but we also know it was in the same area where a lot of Con's stolen cars ended up, or in the vicinity of. I just think that there's so many things that need to be really unpacked and taken down to the very bare minimum, and then use that information one at a time to see if you can find out information from anybody that you can use against them or against somebody else to flip their stories. Because I'm telling you, people know what happened. Some of those people, they may not have it all right. They may not have been there. They may not have seen it. There's a group of people that know what happened that night.
Absolutely.
And the next night.
Absolutely. And the fact that that rumor about Molly being tied to the tree, it was so many people had said that. And then law enforcement had blocked off, Love County Sheriff's Department had blocked off that road, and Carter County, when they went down there, were told to just leave and go away, and that there's a tip on the other side of the county, and just were basically pushed away. I mean, even Molly's family was told by people that she was down there tied to a tree. So This is a small community. People, I don't believe, would have told them that had that not have some sense of truth to it.
But the good news is that there is more information coming out. Tips are still coming in. People who haven't spoken in years, who have heard the podcast, are feeling compelled, maybe not to come out, but we're hearing that they're bubbling over with information. So It's only a matter of time, and those people will be questioned. And I'm certain that the B.I.A. will go through and do a checkoff list of the people and places that need to be searched. Like, perfect example. And also people that had given statements in the past. Perfect example is this one gentleman.
Definitely.
Who basically said that he said a lot and then brought them to a particular place. And I don't know if we're allowed to use his name, so I may have to bleep his name out. But this one person brought the U.S. Marshals and I believe the FBI to a place where he said he helped bury them. And he was basically forced to do it. He had seen something and they said, well, now you see something, now you're involved, so you have to bury it. There has been times where he had actually broken down several times. And once he was hospitalized, and they have statements from EMTs saying that he knew something about Molly and Colt, and that stuff's still coming out. That's still circling around. He recanted his story a couple times, I believe. Those types of people need to be questioned again.
And Jodi, you know who we're talking about. So what did you think of him?
That particular person we talked about.
Definitely. He would be high on my list. Remember, he was allegedly, the car was stored at his property, supposedly, the morning after.
Really?
Yes.
Kind of refresh my memory about that. I don't.
Okay, so the person who allegedly drove the car, Aaron Ramon, he's deceased now, but supposedly he drove the car out to and it was stored there for a while. That came out, that was in the notes, some of the notes that I read.
The police reports?
No, it was a handwritten note. Somebody must have said it on an interview, and I don't know exactly who that was, but it was very, very early on. And that's why he was always a red flag to me, because that kind of information, when it comes out that quick and it's that specific, there's usually some truth in it. It may not be the whole truth, or it may be a variation of the truth, but there's usually some truth in that. If you can use that to get some information to break him down, or to even compare his stories, so that you can usually talk them down to the truth. It might take some time and it might take a while, but those early pieces of information, I think, is where the key is to this. He is one of my prime suspects, not so much for the deeds, but for the events afterwards.
And the information.
Okay, so go back for a second, because I'm not familiar with this other person who's deceased that you're talking about. So you're saying that the car that Con Nip was driving the night of the chase was moved by and Aaron Ramon.
Supposedly it was moved by Aaron to property.
And how far away is property from where?
I don't think it's very far at the time. I think, and I've looked at it on the map, but to be real honest, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't quite remember. And I looked at so many things on the map, I don't want to get them mixed up. But I believe, if I remember correctly, it's not far.
And then took the U.S. Marshals out to the spot where he said Molly and Colt were buried, or he helped bury, because they threatened him because he saw something. He recanted that statement.
Right.
And then broke down again later to EMTs and had an episode and had to be hospitalized. I mean, I feel bad for people like this because,
definitely.
It's tragic that you're a young kid and you're in this situation and you have to bear the cross of this horrible secret where people are dead and what happened to them, and you can't tell their family and you can't tell law enforcement to get justice for the family and for the victims, and you have to sleep with this at night. These are God-fearing people, most of them I've met in that area, and it's like, how do you reconcile your life with this? I mean, I do know that he is pretty active in the rodeo world.
I don't know him. I've never met him, but I did look him up. He seems like he's a little different than the rest of them. I mean, he may fit in, but he doesn't seem like he's on exactly the same level as they are.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you because I did look into him too. And I did reach out to him a few times to speak to him. He did friend me back, but we've never spoken properly. And I always just wanted to ask him, like, you will be protected if you tell the truth. You don't have to keep running from it. If it's enough to put you in the hospital, it's sad.
I think that's the thing that you have to understand, and you can learn about his personality, is the fact that he was breaking down like this. He feels horrible about it, and his conscience is hurting, and because he's living with that. So regardless of anything happens, he has to live with this for the rest of his life.
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
but at least if you tell the truth and you help, then you can kind of move on.
Right. You'd think, but I'm sure that the agent that's got this investigation now, I'm sure that one of his phone calls will be to the U.S. Marshal Service that dealt with him. But I would certainly recommend that because he or she will have some insight as to what their feelings were about him. And it's not unusual for somebody to tell you something and then get scared and recant it. It's really not. So you learn to gear your feelings about people. You learn to read through that kind of stuff. And most of the time you can kind of tell, okay, they recanted, but I believe what they told me. They're just recanting for one reason or another. And there's lots of reasons people do that. But that agent should have a real good grasp of how they really felt about him and what he was saying.
Can you give us an example from your past where you've had someone do that? Has anyone done that to you, where they've given you information and then backpedaled when they realize the consequences they're walking into?
Yeah, I've had it done. I've had it several times. They will go back and forth when, they get cold feet, they go back, they say something. But usually you can, it depends on your trust level. I mean, you have to have a trust level with them, but usually you can eventually get to the truth. Sometimes the fear is just too great. And most of the time that's because they fear for their lives or somebody else's. And probably rightfully so, especially in this case. I think these people should be afraid. I don't think these people, this group I think they're a dangerous group of people.
They were.
Because they're 10 years older, and maybe they've moved on. Maybe they don't have the connections.
We've also heard some of these because they've treat their bodies so poorly with this methamphetamine and drugs and alcohol and the lifestyle they have. We're finding out that some of these people that even in their mid-40s may not be around much longer just because of wear and tear of what they put on their bodies.
Right. I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised that more of them aren't gone. I think I came across only a couple that are now deceased.
But the thing is, too, is that this small group of people has terrorized this entire community. And
I know.
And people are afraid. And it's put this shadow over this community for so long. And that's the thing where, isn't there power in numbers? Shouldn't everybody band together at this point and just say, you know what, enough is enough?
Yeah, I mean, there is power in numbers, but you've got to get people to stick together, and especially out there, it depends. I mean, it's so rural out there that you're pretty much on your own most of the time. First of all, you can't rely on law enforcement being around very quickly if they ever are, especially in Love County. Are they going to show up or aren't they? Who knows? But so those people have to deal with that. They're out in that area by themselves pretty much at any given time. So I understand where they're coming from. I just think that the levels, I don't know if I'm articulating this correctly, but I think that the key to this is not going to be from the ones that are right there at the top. I think the key to this is going to be some player down below that's going to come forward with the break in it. Yeah.
Going back to what we were talking about recanting the story, how does that work legally? Say someone comes in and you interview them, say on the street, and you pull them over and they say, well, I know about this, I know about that. And then you bring them back to the station and you sit them down in a former interview room and you fire up a camera and their statement's being recorded and there's a couple other people there and they're ready to give their statement and then they recant it. And then they leave and then maybe a month later they come back and they say, well, I want to give another statement. At what point do you legally can use that information and believe what they're saying?
Well,
and use it legally in a court. How many times do they get to change their story?
There is no rule, as far as I know, as far as how many times. I mean, but the more they do that, obviously, the harder it's going to be to produce that in court. Because they have to remember, when you go to court, your side questions you. So if you would be testifying for the state in court. So the state questions you a friendly type of question, usually, unless you're a hostile witness. But then you have to go through the cross-examination, and that continues until everybody's satisfied that they've gotten everything they want out. So the more that you have somebody recant their story and then go back and tell you something different and recant that and go back and tell you something different, obviously
it dilutes their testimony.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not something you want to do, but it's not that unusual, especially players that they're fearful, not only for themselves, but their family. They're fearful. So they might they want to do the right thing, but then the fear gets the better of them and they try to get out of it. But generally, depending on how much they trust you, generally you can always work through that. But you can't give up on it. If you just take their word for it and you say, okay, fine, you're not worth it, you're too much trouble, you're never going to get anywhere. You got to try.
Well, that's the thing. And the other question I have is, let's say this person decided to come forward and they were afraid. Is there a way that they could testify and not put themselves out there so that they would be in danger? Because I really think that's the root of all of this, is that everybody's afraid. They're afraid they're going to get killed. If you are pushed into doing something like this where you're covering up a murder and being told if you don't, you're going to die too, it's going to be really difficult to come forward with information. Right. So is there a way that the law can protect this person?
Well, sure. Especially when you're dealing with the feds. They have the federal witness protection program is good. But when people do that, they virtually have to go away. They can't just stay where they are and carry on their life as normal. They will have to start a new life and leave the old life behind, which a lot of people don't want to do, obviously, because you're giving up your family, your friends, freedom. Whatever, your freedom. You're virtually free to live another life, but you're a totally different person and you can never go back. Nobody's forcing you not to go back, but if you go back, the protection is gone. That's the only way you're ever going to be sure that you're going to be protected, and that's through a protection program, something like that. You'll never find an agency that can protect you and your family forever.
I mean, listen, this is a dangerous case, and there's some dangerous people involved in this case. Mm-hmm. But I don't think at this point in the case, that's something that people have to worry about. I think all the players, whoever they are, and it could be one person, it could be two people, it could be three people, it could be 10 people. We don't know. That's how it's been staged, and that's how the information we have. We have versions where it's just one person, two people, three people, a group of people, and so we don't know who's there. But whatever it is, that level of cooperation that the bad guys have had early on in the beginning has all been diluted. And I don't know whether or not they've moved on with their lives. Some of them we know that names have brought up. We can see that they're they have families now and and they're clean and sober. So they've moved on with their lives. All those people have moved on their lives. The only people that haven't moved on their lives are the victims' families, who are still living with this and have to deal with this daily. And I don't know how they process this. I know Paula, the way she processes it is she's trying to find answers. And even now, she feels a sense of relief knowing that an organization like the B.I.A. has taken over, and she's hopeful that they will find a resolution for this.
And that's the way it should be. Paula should never have had to do what she did in a million years. No family member should have to have done what Paula did and hear the things that Paula heard. Now, I'm not saying you don't want to know the truth, but Paula has had to listen to everything. She's had to hear all of the stories, some of which may be true, some of which may have a portion of the truth. But in every event, it was not a good thing. It was a horrible thing.
Not to mention that she put her life in danger.
So many times. So many times it's disgraceful. Okay. And honestly, her life is still in danger. I mean, you just never know. This has been traumatizing for her and her family. And it's really not the way it's supposed to be.
No, it's not. It's not supposed to be that way. And there was no reason for it to be that way. This case should have been solved a long time ago. I mean, I still have hope that it can be solved. I really do. I think that there's too many people that know something for this not to be solved.
I agree.
If you were to have a conversation with the B.I.A. right now, what were some of the things that you would, knowing what you know, and obviously you've been looking into this for almost 6 months now, and I know when we talked earlier, she goes, I'm always noodling on this case. This case has got me going.
I think about it. Yeah, I'll be taking a shower and it'll pop into my head. I can't, but I've always been like that. I wake myself up in the middle of the night thinking of things. And I've always been like that on my cases.
It's hard for you to turn off your investigator mind.
Oh, I can't turn it off. I don't even try to turn it off anymore. When it pops in, I just go with it because I can't turn it off. I never have been able to.
If you had a pipeline to the B.I.A., knowing what you know, what do you think they should look at?
So I would look at, there's a handful of people that were involved that night from the point of the chase to the point where their friends go to Khan's grandfather's house. I would key in on those people initially, plus a couple more. And then, that would be, and I would look heavy at those cases, the people that were involved in all of those stolen vehicles that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 6 or 7 of them.
Yep.
I know that I know it's stolen vehicles and chop shop operations, but mostly stolen vehicles for joyrides and things like that. But I'm telling you, birds of a feather flock together. And those people would be my key interviews to begin with. And I'd work one against the other to see if there's any place I could find a weakness so that I could start building a case against whomever. Too many people there's too many people involved for somebody not to know something. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Even if they weren't there, they may have heard about it, because that's the thing they heard about it.
They can't keep their mouths shut. And we know that this wasn't a one-night thing. We know they were together that whole weekend, in and out. I don't know if everybody was there, but there were people in and out. And that they were talking. And so that would be I would look at those cases. I would look at his history right around that time period and key on those people. I'm telling you this, I'm saying this off the top of my head, but do you remember when that picture of Khan in the silver Mustang was posted on Facebook and
Yes.
It said, "Catch us if you can"? Okay, so I was looking at that the other day and I noticed for the first time that the person who posted that picture, she said she was with Khan. And there were 3 people in that car. So her name's right there. She would be one of the first people I'd be pulling in. It's obvious that she was part of the inner circle. If she was actually with him in a stolen car and posted on the internet, catch us if you can.
But realistically though, the more and more I know about that time period and the people that hung out with, because, Paula sent us an article that was sent to her.
Yeah.
That was, I guess there was the place where they all partied, which was near there. That literally the weekend after a K10 News posted something about people getting charged because of someone ODing in that same kind of party atmosphere that Molly was in. So, and it was literally posted the same week that they were gone.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of for young people partying in that area to apparently overdose. And that's something that could have happened to Molly too. She was partying, she overdosed, and she was with them, and then they're like, oh, what are we going to do?
Well, the only reason why I don't buy that is because at 6:00 in the morning she was calling people.
Exactly.
So that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me. It never has.
Right.
Everybody's always been trying to say that. I'm like, that's not true, because I talked to her best friend. She called her, and she called that other guy, and she was crying, and it was the next day. So I don't buy that. I think that they had to get rid of her because she knew what happened.
Yeah, I do believe she was collateral damage.
But I'm just saying that environment, they partied like that all the time. Mm-hmm. They partied like that all the time.
Yeah, but that's okay. Right. That's okay. It's that those kind of people are the ones that will have that one little piece of information that will lead you to a break. And you just have to talk to them. You just have to talk to them and get through all that. That's just me. I may be totally off, because it's hard when you don't really know what they have and what they don't have and who said what and who they've talked to. I'm just saying that I would start right with that group, because no one in this world could convince me that they didn't know that was going to be an insurance scam. They talked about that. I think it got out of hand. Something happened in the middle of it. But the people who were originally involved in that whole thing, I think that they have some knowledge that maybe a good interrogator will get to.
Yeah.
That's where I would start.
Okay. That's good. Well, yeah, I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to go back to the beginning. 'Cause I knew they do have all the files.
Person that should, I think, has some information, and you haven't heard very much from him, is the former, I guess he's a former, I don't know, maybe he's still a boyfriend, who was given the gun and the machete. I know that they supposedly tested those things. I don't know what kind of tests they did on them. I still have a hang up on that ring that was given to OSBI. That should be tested. I don't know if it has, but if they can put that ring on Molly's finger, that gives them leverage for the people that had that ring.
Yeah. No, I mean, the problem is there's all these tips and stuff like that haven't been fully vetted out. Some of them have, but I'd say there's a lot of them that haven't. And it's going to be a real challenge for the B.I.A. to kind of go back to the beginning and analytically look at all of this information, because there's so much information. You know, and a lot of it is bullshit. A lot of it is conjecture. A lot of it is just myth. But there's, like you said before, you got to go back to the facts. And that's what they told me when I was on the phone with them. And he said, listen, we got to start with the facts first. The facts are the chase.
Exactly.
The
Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of facts, because at the point that the chase was called off, your facts stopped. Other than, who called when, we have the pinging, the placement of the cell phones, you have them together, that area. We know where the car was eventually found, but I have a really hard time believing that was there for 2 weeks and nobody ever saw that.
Yeah,
I
agree.
mean, I have a hard time with that. I think that car was moved, but that's just my personal.
When I think about it, I can think about it two ways because of the way they operate down there, that they could have moved the car, they could have done that. Other part of me thinks that they're just too lazy to do it. And if Con didn't know anything about what happened to Molly and Colt, and Joe didn't know what happened to Molly and Colt, why would they move the car? So that's the other thing. So there's a lot of things that you have to kind of...
And we know they move cars because the Silver Mustang, the sheriff and his deputy were in the area before and found other stolen property where they later found the Silver Mustang, and the Silver Mustang was stolen before that time. So we know they have a history of moving cars around.
Yeah, and I think that's what helps. That's what dilutes the investigation, because you had Joe Russell there for 16 years, had an open door policy for people committing crimes that people that he was friends with. There was a lot of stuff going on. It's hard not to try to connect all these other legal activities and people to something, the double homicide that happened, because there was so much lawlessness. It's almost like a smokescreen, and it dilutes the investigation because there was so much drug trafficking and car stealing and car chasing that wasn't getting prosecuted.
None of it was prosecuted until later.
Exactly. So it diluted a double homicide, because then it looks like, well, anybody could be a suspect. They're all doing stuff. They were always down there. So-and-so knew so-and-so. They used to run and steal cars with Con, so maybe he knows something. But all that information is splintered.
Right. But then there's the information, that takes it out of that area and takes it over to the valley and to the horseshoe. And I'm not sure that's not a little bit of the truth. I'm not sure that didn't happen. So there's just there's like 4 areas that need to be kind of vetted out as far as geographical areas. You've got Con's area, and then you've got the valley, and you've got the horseshoe down in there. Well, those are the top 3, because down there by Con's, you pick up the area where the car was, and you pick up the oil wells.
And then there are the areas that need to be researched. I mean, they got to go back to Moxley Pond, because the dogs hit on that and we didn't get to finish. Because now that now the B.I.A. is involved and we backed off, and they're gonna look at that. There's the oil well, which is
a lot of tips about the oil well.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of things the dogs hit, and the dogs did hit there too
while we were there.
So I mean, there's a lot of things from the do, and the good thing is that they're really enthusiastic and professional. And after speaking with them, we're very, very confident that they're going to get answers.
I hope so. I'm thrilled that it's with them.
And we've gotten some tips we just recently sent to them.
Oh, good.
And he said, he goes, I want you to put our information on your podcast, put it on your website, and never got that from any of the other ones.
No, they wouldn't even answer our phone calls.
Yeah.
So
it's
which has never happened. I mean, honestly, in all these cases, even the high profile Jennifer Kessie case, I still was able to get the local officials to talk to me. And in this case, as you know, the only thing Joe Russell said to us was, fuck the family. OSBI never returned any of my phone calls, and I think I called like 20 times.
Right. I've never seen anything like this. I really haven't. I understand from an investigator standpoint that you have to keep certain things close to the vest. There are always certain things you don't want to get out into the public or even to the family because you just don't know where things are going to go. But those are few and far between when you're talking about how you deal with a family that's going through something like this.
Sure.
And you deal with a public that doesn't know what's going on. They don't know if they've got murderers run around in there. I don't know if I'm articulating that properly, but there are always certain things that as an investigator, you have to keep something back so that you can gauge some truth.
But you can also, when people are looking for answers, at least give some kind of statement.
Perfect example. I keep on going back to this because I think it's a prime example on how a case should be worked. Is the Idaho killings. Mm-hmm. Even though they were keeping a lot of information in, they were also giving a lot of information out.
Right.
And that information was important, and it helped them solve the case when they found the white Hyundai.
The car.
They
right.
immediately put that out there. They didn't hold on to it. They put it out there, and at the same time, they knew where the car was, and they were tracking it.
Right.
And they had the Indiana State Police. They called them. They said, just pull him over. Don't arrest him. Pull him over. Photographs and body camera of that. So that's a perfect example, and I say it again, where both state, federal, and local law enforcement worked in collaboration, and they got answers very quickly, and they potentially have the killer who is going to be standing trial soon.
Right. I mean, that in the beginning, and I remember I didn't really follow it too much in the beginning. And then I kind of just, skimmed what was going on. And I started seeing the grumblings of, oh, they don't know what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. And as it turned out, it was a picture perfect example of how departments can and should work together.
Exactly.
And that's what happened. The problem here is that Joe Russell was the king of this little fiefdom, and everybody knew Con Nip was doing this stuff. So they just were like, ugh, it's just him doing this stuff again. Nobody took it seriously. No one thought this was going to turn into what it did from the get-go.
Right. And what's worse is when they knew it had gone south and they knew something was wrong, they didn't do anything about it.
No. And that's the problem.
Nothing.
I mean, with the Idaho thing, there were people clamoring like a couple weeks after that they're not doing enough. Here, it's just like, it's almost 10 years. So It's not like, it's almost 10 years. It's nine and a half years when we started the podcast. So what's happening at this point? I think they've been given the benefit of the doubt of working this case. They just either don't want to solve it or don't have the resources, or they feel like they're never going to solve it. So why put the resources into it? And I think that B.I.A. agent we spoke to didn't have any of those reservations. He was just like, we're going to start from the beginning. I have a different way of working. This is how I'm going to work. And he explained how he was going to work. And I'm like, he had a plan.
Right.
And he shared the plan, which is like,
great. That's the way you get things done. And I have hope. I just think that this is a solvable case. Even now, I think it's a solvable case, but it's not. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take there's a lot more people involved than you think, even than I think. When I think of this case in a snapshot, basically, if I just take a quick snapshot in my head of the case, and then I start looking at, well, wait a minute, there's a lot more involved potentially than looking at that small snapshot.
No, and we just want to thank you, and we got to wrap this up, but I want to thank you. And what people don't know about Jodi is she's actively working in this case. This is not, we just don't call her just to get her opinion on things. She's actively working this case. She's actually helped tremendously in this case, both on a technology basis and with her contacts, and she's working on leads right now that we hope to turn over to the B.I.A. that's going to help solve this case. So she's been a tremendous benefit to this case, and I want everybody to know that, and we want to thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, it is my pleasure, and I would be a very happy person if this case could just be solved. I want Paula to have some peace and the rest of the families to have peace, and it's solvable, and I know we can do it. I know we can.
We agree. Thank you, Jodi. You're the best.
Hey, you guys are the best. Who are you kidding?
All right. You take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
Our investigation into the case of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes continues. We're going to be sorting through tips, and we are going to be speaking to new experts in law enforcement and the legal field from around the country who will hopefully help us unravel this mystery.
If you have any information regarding the case, please contact the BIA at www.bia.gov/BIA/OJS/missing-murder-unit.
You can also call their hotline with tips at 1-833-560-2065 and email them directly at ojs_mmu@bia.gov.
And if you want to text them with a tip, text keyword BIA-MMU and send your tip to 847-411.
Check the Partners in True Crime website for this and any additional information.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline. All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.